We Filipinos still have a long way to go when it comes to investing for the future. We seem to prioritize instant gratification, but I think how to invest properly is something that we all need to be familiar with.
It's simple, really. You work today, you invest, then leave better tomorrow.
Besides, investing shouldn't be scary, you know. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. I mean, I started when I was a teen. I hope that I inspire my kids that when they're old enough, they'll tell me that they're excited to do the same.
What's important is to find a good reason to invest. It becomes so much easier when you visualize your goal.
People think I travel so much and I have a YOLO or you only live once attitude. But the truth is, I travel because that's my business and I make sure I invest in it, spend time for it to give people the best experiences they deserve.
When people find out that they invest for what I'm passionate about, they always say, "What?" But I always just tell them that I can afford to fund my passions because of my investments.
The thing is, some people are just too shy to ask for financial advice. Like asking for help is seen as a sign of weakness, when in fact, it's through asking that we learn the best way of doing things, even in investing. With ATRAM, you can engage and be confident that you have a partner in achieving your financial goals.
People usually think investing means buying a house or retiring. Sure, it can, but saving for smaller goals is another way to do it.
People think investing is expensive. Nowadays, even with a small amount of money, you can already begin your investment with ATRAM. It's easy to make it a monthly or even a weekly routine. ATRAM makes investing simple, even for busy moms like me.
And even if you're always on the go, like me, you can keep an eye on your investments online. Plus, I'm confident that ATRAM, my trusted partner, will take care of my portfolio and make sure it gets invested in the right place.
Never settle for average. Why? Because life is what we make it. And a strong investment partner can help us live the life we want.
ATRAM is dedicated to delivering an investment experience that helps people get more out of life. In fact, it was built with that single focus, to help clients attain their investment objectives. We see Filipinos invest in their dreams and aspirations. With ATRAM, building the future is a task we can surely take on.
With ATRAM,
You
Can take on tomorrow.
Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this week's episode of ATRAM's webinar series. Today, we'll be having a special educational webinar. I am Paolo Edelior, Business Development Manager at ATRAM. Here at ATRAM, we do not only assist you manage your portfolios, but to us, you must go beyond than what's expected to be able to maximize the value that we provide our clients. Some of the topics that we'll be covering this morning are essentials of financial planning, sound investment management, and the different financial considerations during these unprecedented times. Additionally, I'd like to let you know that this webinar will be recorded and that copies will be disseminated within the day, as well as posted on all our social media pages. Make sure to stay until the end as we will be wrapping up with a quick feedback survey. Our presenter today is the President and CEO of Rampver Financials, one of the largest distributors of investment funds in the Philippines. He's a serial entrepreneur with companies and endeavors in multiple industries. He holds key directorship positions in Globe, Ayala Land Logistics Holdings, National Reassurance Corporation, and Singapore Life, to name a few. He is also a business, leadership, and financial advisor, plus a best-selling author of 2 books, namely Trailblazing Success and Firing on All Cylinders. He previously was the president and CEO of Life and was the chairman of its affiliates and subsidiaries. Prior to that, he was president and CEO of Ayala Land Sales Inc., Ayala Land International, and chief marketing and sales officer of Ayala Land. He was also a professor and department chair for marketing at the DLSU Graduate School of Business. He was one of 10 outstanding students of his batch at UP Diliman, where he finished his BSBA with a double major in marketing and finance. He finished his MBM with distinction at AIM, fellowship with distinction at the Life Management Institute of Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Please welcome Mr. Rex Mendoza. Good
Hi,
morning,
Paul.
Rex. Good
Good,
morning.
good morning to everyone out there. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, before I give you the floor, we know that you have a huge following, and a lot of Filipinos count on your financial wisdom. To start, can you share with us who your financial hero is and why?
Well, difficult question, Paolo, because there are a lot. I have to share a few. I'm very active in what we call a mastermind group, and in that group would be, very financially involved personalities. Bo Sanchez, Edward Lee, all of our brothers out there. There are like 8 gentlemen there. Very important because we know that it's not about money. It's not about simply finance. It's the spirituality that goes with it, and who these are for. Another group, probably the big 3 at IMG. Joan de las Peñas, Bart Bora, and Noel Arandilla. And why do I say I admire these guys? It's because they give you the idea that anyone can do it. Anyone, and when I say anyone, it's really anyone. There's that inspirational touch to that, and then maybe lastly, this set of financial mentors. Marvin Hermo, Randall Chongson, all of them, Edric Mendoza. We're part of a solid group. But again, there's an international side to this. Tony Robbins, Dave Ramsey, Adam Koo. I guess for some of them, I have this pleasure and this joy of sharing platforms. I've spoken with them in certain conventions outside the Philippines. So again, just my honor. So there are a lot. What I share is mostly what I've gotten from these people.
All right, thanks, Rex. You have the floor.
Thank you, Paulo. Really wanted to, make this worthwhile for a lot of our listeners and viewers. And I've been attending this weekly webinar, and I've gone through all of those topics. And I guess because ATRAM is ATRAM, it has focused largely on markets, what we have relied on it for. I mean, the information, the analysis, and again, I might have to say I've missed out on that. Mike, Philip, June, Miguel. I mean, these are the guys I also follow because, I even tell a lot of people my views on the market are not exactly my views. I mean, I get it from these guys who take it as a full-time job, who are equipped and are educated to do it. So I can do what I do because I can rely on people like them. So if we can go to my slides now, Paolo, can I have slide number 1? So I'll focus my discussion on financial health. It's not what's out there, because what's out there has actually been discussed to death in many particular avenues, events, channels. But I guess I'd like to focus more on the impact of all of these. So next slide, I want you to look at, the framing of it. We're already 123 days of the quarantine protocols, from the ECQ, MECQ, GCQ, hopefully MGCQ, but probably not until July 31, right? Or August 1. So we're there, we're in this pandemic, and, we're locked in. And while we're doing that, there's a volatile equity market. And how volatile? Wow. A drop of 41% in a few days. A recovery of exactly 41%. So it's a different base, so it's not fully recovered, right? But when we got to 6,500, that's a recovery of another 31%. But you see now, a consolidation phase that gets you about a 30% recovery from that drop, which is still making us, 23% below the start of the year. And if we're going to be looking at the tip of the market in January of 2018, we're still down, 34% from that. So that volatility, while we're locked, puts us in a situation where we think a lot about things, and it kind of stresses us. For some people, it causes anxiety. There's this decreasing interest rates, which practically worries our retirees out there, retirees who were like LOIs, living on interest. And that interest has actually been halved, or now 1/3. So how can they push forward with the same expense base? And even for the wealthy, almost all asset classes have been impaired, except for the, physical high value metals such as gold and silver. I mean, almost all asset classes are challenged. So as we're locked in and we're looking at all of that, it's natural for people to think about situations and get worried, get that anxiety and the depression. So as I say, it's just much like our physical well-being, financial security, the peace of mind and health, is a function of everything that you've done thus far. So it's almost like our physical well-being or our physical health. Are you doing what we call regular maintenance, or is it breakdown maintenance? Now, COVID is quite a wake-up call for many, because for many of us, sometimes as long as you can bridge gaps, it's okay to be financially unsound because we have salaries coming in, we're expecting things to get better. But all of a sudden, a pandemic like this hits, then you're in a situation where you get to think about your situation. And I guess this is very important. There's a survey done on Philippine consumers. And this was like a startling fact, 32% of people think about their health, physical health, and their safety. Because obviously this is a health pandemic. However, do you know that 36% of people, a greater number, worry about their financial situation? It's more financial than physical. And that has caused some distress that affects the physical as well. So mental health is actually borne by a lot of other things, but physical can be greatly affected by the financial. So on both ends, on one side, people are thinking, oh, well, I still have a job. Oh, what will happen if my money runs out? That's top of mind for this side. But how about those who are probably thinking, okay, we're wealthy, we're fine, we have a good net worth, but how can I protect what I built up over the years? What can I do to make sure that I not only stand on solid ground, but that solid ground remains to be solid? All of us actually thought this would be what? 2 weeks, a month? Whoever thought it would be 3 months? And now, people are now thinking, even if you lift these protocols, we're not going to go out of the gates and outside and dine and all that stuff. There would be time. There would be time to get into the new normal. And because of that, our financial health will be impacted by this. So if we move on to the next slide, I'd go down to the very, very basics of financial health. The basic metrics would be having enough funds for our basic needs. Your food, your clothing, your shelter. But again, as you take care of those needs, we get on to other things where we can enjoy life better, right? The traveling, better brands, all the luxuries that you might think of. But you see, financial stress causes anxiety, and it can even impair your relationships and well-being. If you don't get what you want, or you're actually getting what you want, but you're getting that not out of your own, capability, but you're actually getting into deficit spending just to enjoy things, you will pay for that. That will kick you in the butt. So all of these are basic metrics. And that's exactly the way it reflects on like the way we handle our physical health as well, right? There are times when you want to enjoy the food that you shouldn't, or you have to moderate it, but you pay for it because the hit comes later on. So as we get into this pandemic and we're tied up between will it be enough and what can I do to make the values hold, we do so many crazy things. And this is why I'm putting this slide, up front. Can I move on to the next slide now? This is up front, because I could have done this at the tail end, but because of what's happening, if I'm gonna miss out on anything, this is one thing I don't want to miss out on. People are gambling. People are gambling. I mean, how many online stock trading accounts have been opened in the last 2 months? And by whom? Are these really wealthy individuals who have the excess money? Or is it because Soler and City of Dreams are closed that this is now the new betting table? I'm being serious about this because there is a difference between gambling and trading. Trading has rules. Trading has, a system to it. But gambling is very different. And there's so many examples that I can have of people just wanting to earn more money. There's a difference in achieving financial goals and simply making more money. And that question, I'd really want you to ask yourself, what am I doing now? Am I trying to earn more money? Or is this really connected to the fulfillment of my financial dreams? Big thing. And why do I say that? Wow, because there's a stock, and I'm not going to mention it, right? Introduced us at a peso, moved up to 450. That's 350% gain. Less than 2 months. And now a drop of 44% from that high. There are some people who made money, no question, but there are some people who've lost money. Unfortunately, they would be the late movers. They would be the people who the best traders are going to be playing with, right? I think you've heard that. We all go to the table and people with the money actually give that money to people with the experience. And people with the experience get the money and they give the experience to people with the money who've just lost the money. There's another issue. Wow. IPO by introduction, valuation, which is even questionable, at 1010, given by an accounting firm. But that's okay. I mean, that's submitted to the PSE, there's logic to it. But to have a stock introduced at 1010 to reach a price of 240 is, for me, gambling. That's not reading technicals. That's not, we can draw the technicals now. Actually, in a few days, we can draw the technicals. It's funny, but it's actually happening. But do people know exactly what they bought? At 240 pesos, the valuation of that company is 24 billion. And what's the underlying value? What's the property? It's the north wing of a mall in Ilocos Norte, which I think both investor and seller know would be closed at this time. Is that investing or is that gambling? Then we go into anchoring. Anchoring is, making sense of movements, of what's happening. We base it on past experience. Oh, it's not going to get lower than this. It does. There's always a first time. Oh, this is a classic U-shaped recovery, V-shaped recovery. Really? Because I'll tell you guys, if we don't have basis for anchoring something, we're going to create it. We're people. Our brains will do that naturally. Okay? So we anchor it and we base those decisions on the anchoring that would be reference points that are not fairly accurate. Herding. Herding is when, we get to realize, oh, people are selling. If they're selling, I should sell too. Oh, people are buying. Like, for example, when it dropped, people actually wanted to sell because everyone's selling. There is a sense of truth to a bigger base of people doing it. Don't we know that affirmation is very important to any person? We want to affirm what others are doing and what we're doing, and they should be the same. Unfortunately, both herding and anchoring get you to do two things. Buy high and sell low. That is the problem. And we do that by overreacting. Every piece of news we react to. Oh, there's a vaccine. Oh, we're back to ECQ in Cebu. So all of those news we react to. And I actually tell a lot of my friends, you know what? Your portfolio can be just like your face. Don't touch it. Don't touch it. At a time like this, don't touch it. Stick to the plan. Stick to what you've set forth. Because when you do that, then what you see is an opportunity. It's not an arena where we have to battle each other to beat each other and do better. You know, I do one thing better, right? I actually don't get into the arena to fight with a lot of people there saying doing better than everyone else, trading this, trading that. No, I resort to asking the guys in ATRAM, okay, I give you my bets, go down there and do the fighting for me. Because there are things that I want to do better. There are things that I enjoy doing much better than watching this market and making those decisions. But don't get me wrong, I have a trading portfolio that is not connected to my future financial goals. My trading portfolio is connected to the cocktails and parties that I usually attend, Zoom meetings where I can brag about making money or making more money than another person. But it is not something that I rely on for my goals, for the achievement of what I want to achieve. This is very important. Punishing yourself for decisions or indecision. Don't we do that? You know, we buy and it goes down. Oh, I shouldn't have bought. I should have sold. It went up. I should have bought. So anything can actually be viewed as a negative. It's up to you. You know, I have friends who actually bought and the market went up and they're still unhappy. Why? Because they could have bought more. There will always be something, one thing. And that's actually bringing you the stress. You know, get those decisions, accept them. You made those decisions, move forward. Don't punish yourself for decisions or indecisions that you've been guilty of. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if you have a plan and you stick to the plan, the long-term view will actually correct the mistakes you make today. Unfortunately, if you have a short-term scenario and you're playing within the short term, you're much like any fund manager, creating value for yourself. Is that what you want to do full-time? Are you even good at it? Sometimes I want to ask the traders and gamblers now, are you really making money? How many of those trades actually lose and how many of them profit? Will this get you to your retirement? You know, all of those questions will tell you, hey, quit on doing the wrong things. I know you're tempted because swings in the market can be 15%, 20%, upwards and downwards. You can really scalp. There can be money to be made. But are these for you or are these games for the guys, the big boys who are actually equipped to do it? And if you find out it's not for you, then maybe you should do something better. You should continuously invest the way you invested and the right way, because these are attached to your goals and your goals will have to be fulfilled. Can I move on to the next slide now? And this is why we tell a lot of people at Rampver, and we're partners with ATRAM on this. We'd like them to know, do asset allocation that would be goals-based. What are the goals that you have for your family, for your loved ones, for yourself? And based on this, have a financial portfolio and allocation that meets it soundly. In which case, that's your objective, and optimizing and outperforming the market will not be your priorities. You will have fund managers, you will have stocks doing that for you. Because the truth is, it is not the yield that will make your goals come true. It is not the yields. You know, the difference in 2%, 3% yields, even in 10% yields, if you can make it consistently, is not going to matter enough to your bottom line. You know what will matter? Is how much you contribute. You know, I tell a lot of friends, ang galing mo trader, you've done, wow, 20% on a 10,000 peso portfolio. How will that make you retire? Right? So you focus on what you need to do, not on what you need to earn. Asset allocation will do that for you. So you reduce your negative behavioral biases and you can concentrate on what you can be paid better to do. That's the reason why I tell a lot of people, there are a lot of asset allocation models strategic asset allocation, dynamic asset allocation, all of these diversifications. Great. I know all of them. I've learned them in books as well. But is that relevant to you? You know what? I go to the fund managers and I ask them about their asset allocation. They are fund managers. It's their job to increase value. Your job is to fulfill your dreams. Your job is to achieve your goals. Creating value is a job that's separate from that. Now, I cannot blame you if you want to do both. My question is, have you done well in trying to do both? Or should you concentrate on something that you can manage better? Next slide, please. So I'd like us to really do this. They all say, if it doesn't get measured, it's not done. So much like checkups, I'd like you to get down to monitoring your financial health, tracking it. The tracking has to be done on a regular basis. And the minimum for me is actually monthly. My concern has always been this. Why do companies do that? And why can't people and families do it? Companies have budgets, companies have targets, and they match up and measure how they're doing against that on a month-to-month basis. You know what? There are even companies who do this daily or weekly. But see, for regular people and families, they don't even check. And guess what happens? It becomes breakdown maintenance. It is when there's something wrong that they get to realize that there is something wrong. By that time, remedial action is expensive. It's not only expensive, sometimes remedial action cannot be done because it's too late. So I'd like people to take this on monthly. Be aware of what you earn, what you spend, your level of debt, and your investments. For a lot of people, they don't even have a snapshot of this. And how can you track the way you're proceeding to achieve your goals if you don't even have a dashboard? You don't have a dashboard, so you don't know what's happening. Information is required. And after you get the information, you have to analyze, refine, and execute. Okay? Income. It's not right just having a job. That's just one stream of income. Do you know that the common millionaire, in dollar terms, common millionaire has 7 streams of income? 7. The Filipino stops at having a job, period. And that's why it's difficult to move up the line of financial freedom, because there's only one source of income and a lot of sources for expenses, a lot of avenues for expenses. So look at your income stream. What have you established to add on to it? Is there a side hustle that you can put in? Have you invested in other assets that can earn for you? Your money can earn more money. Money is a great employee. It works 24 hours a day without complaining. So if you can set forth income where direct and passive income go together, then the way you're going to accumulate will be much faster. And analyze your expenses too. What has been happening on that expense side? Are you moving the needle in terms of your hierarchy of needs? Your understanding of your needs and wants, that's at the lower level. That's very, very important. So you get to compare income and expenses on a monthly basis, minimum. And you can get yourself into a gap. And what's that gap? That's basically the difference. Is that gap becoming bigger? Or is that gap becoming smaller? Or is that gap even negative? You know what it means if it's negative? If it's negative, then you have to bridge the deficit. You have to deal with bridge financing. And the typical Filipino will do what? Borrow. So over time, your debt increases rather than decreases, or would be at zero so that you can invest. What's worse is this. People pile up debts and they are investing on the other side. Wow. You have a time deposit that earns less than 1%, but you have a credit card in which, account you roll over at an interest rate of 18%. That's the reason why your bankers are very happy with you. right? You roll over a debt where you pay 18% per annum, and you roll over a time deposit where you get less than 1%, and you're very happy with it. So when you get to analyze this, you will begin to realize, how can I now increase that gap positively so that I can do more of investing and I can eliminate that debt? But hey, for many of us, debt is natural because you want to invest in like real estate, the house, the residence, the crowning glory for your family and loved ones, the reward for all of those years laboring on a job. That's okay. But how about the debt service on that mortgage? Are you covering that with your income? Or are you increasing income to cover for that on a continuous basis? So that's very important. Next, your habits and your behavior. We always say this, money is never technical, it's behavioral. So you check yourself. You see, surprisingly, in a pandemic like this, people are not yet too particular about their essentials. I thought when I say essentials, it would be basics such as food. No. How much is Lazada and Shopee selling on non-food items, on gadgets, on, different luxury items even? So we're into a pandemic and people cannot take out that itch to buy. And people are worried about not having enough emergency funds. Wow. So might be a good time to sit down and analyze, at the very least, for as long as this quarantine period holds, can we just focus on essentials? And even those essentials, I'll tell you, can be handled even better. Those essentials can be handled better, right? Food. Wow. Do we always ask for delivery? Or can we actually cook in the house? And cooking can be a function of recipe. Can we have great recipes where the ingredients are less and the taste gets even better? It's fun to do all of these things, but you see, makes a difference financially. It does make a difference financially. So what have you done to analyze all that? And very important, it's the entertainment. You have all the time now. Guess what? It's a joke that the Rampver guys will probably pin me down on this because I always ask this question. What do you do on your spare time? Are you earning money on your spare time? Or are you actually spending money on your spare time? Netflix, all of these, videos, all of these movies. You subscribe to them, you pay. You consume data, you pay. You're entertained at a cost. How about doing board games with family? Isn't that going to be entertaining? That doesn't cost anything. How about structuring time with family, discussions, high level, high value discussions? And I'll tell you, this is transpired. I'm using it as an example because we do it in our family. You know me, my age, traditional, digital immigrant. My children are digital natives. In our structured discussions, they have told me what to do so that Rampver can improve its business to tap markets like them. Because apparently, it's very clear, we're not appealing to their kind. So we come up with discussions, 1 hour, 2 hour, like sessions, twice a week. Guess what happens? We are entertained. There are jokes flying on the table. But we also get to immediately do things which will improve our businesses. What do you do on your spare time? See, it's very important that we shift value from a negative to a positive. If you can set up systems, you can automate these things. A lot of people, and that's why we don't do it regularly, it's because they're not automated. Can you just imagine if ATRAM as a company has a target for the year and they tell all of their people, okay, let's see each other by the end of the year. Let's see each other at the tail end of it to check, if we've hit targets. For a company, that is a mortal sin, that you don't monitor, that you don't even have a dashboard. But in individuals and families, it's the normal thing. It's the norm. But if you can now have systems where you say, end of the month, let's analyze things. Let's collect information, let's refine that information, and let's execute on certain improvements. If you do that month in and month out, you will see developments and improvements. Next slide, please. This is a standard definition of wealth management. It's a full-scale needs-based management that assists individuals and families in 3 stages of life: accumulation, preservation, and transfer of wealth, by customizing the right product solutions to meet goals and objectives. There is something to do per stage of financial lives, but we don't do that. We're not into analyzing what phase we're in and what's best to do in that particular phase. Why? Because most Filipinos are so ingrained in just making more money. This is my income, this is my excess cash, I need to earn more money out of this. For what? For whom? How much? I tell a lot of guys, at an 8% consistent growth rate, which is not exactly much, do you know that you can actually enjoy your kid and send them to school, send them to college, university? You can actually get a good retirement in your twilight years, and you keep yourself within a risk base that is not precarious. When you accumulate, you can focus on growth. When you preserve, you can focus on security. And when you transfer, you focus on eliminating leakages. Different objectives require different products. Different objectives require different ways to attend to certain priorities. But we miss out on this because we simply want to make more money. So let me give you an idea just to make this a little granular, because I don't have a lot of time. I'm so sorry, I'll just have to generalize. But let me give you as much granularity as I can. Next slide, please. So everyone's focused on investment management, make more money, position for growth. Sometimes, as I've said, we throw risks out the window. There is a limit to the impact of investment management. And when I tell my friends and I do consultations on their financial track, we make realizations that are actually astounding for many of them. Because you make a lot of effort, you drive a lot of effort to increase yields by 2 to 3%. Guess where you lose them? You lose them in leakages like taxes. You lose them in leakages like paying more interest. Because wealth management can be done in many different ways. Let me just talk about B, for example. Wealth enhancement. Wealth enhancement is an understanding of how you deploy your funds. How do you deploy your capital? And the rich and the wealthy are very good at this. You know what they do? They leverage. They leverage on capital and funds, and they also leverage on the talent of other people. That's why they make more money. The talent of people are paid for. See, many people sell their talent and they get a salary. The rich guy pays for the talent and gets more out of it. That's called leverage. So if you do things yourself, there is a limit to how you can expand your wealth base. So if you can leverage, that's why, people sometimes say, mutual funds are not good. Fund management is not good. You pay fees. Okay. If that's true, then do everything you need to do. Don't hire a maid. You can actually clean up the house, wash the clothes. Don't hire a driver. You can drive. But why do we hire this help? Why do we hire these people? Why do we get employees into our businesses? Because they can help us create more value. Because they can do the things we don't like doing so that we can do what we do best and get paid higher for what we do best. I have a driver and that driver takes care of my wife and my children in terms of where they go and all that stuff. Can you just imagine if I have to do that myself? Then I cannot do what I like to do. And I pay the driver salaries. I pay the fund manager fees because I don't want to do the daily grind they do. Plain and simple, wealth enhancement is creating leverage. And when you do that, think about the leverage on funds, right? Rates are down. You look at what the companies are doing now. They're accessing the debt market. They're consolidating their debts, going to the market, getting cheap money now. Why are companies doing this? Because they want to enhance their margins. It's a good opportunity. Rates are low. Why aren't you doing that? You know, if you have good credit, you have mortgage here, you have a debt there in that other bank. What if you go to a good bank right now, consolidate all of that, and ask them for a lower rate? Because you're good credit, you have great reputation, great payment experience. Another bank can put their bet on you. Sir, we'll lower your rate. Let's consolidate all of that. Guess what happens? You now pay a lower interest for it. And as you pay a lower interest for the capital deployed, wouldn't that augment your income? Wouldn't that augment your wealth as well? Taxes. There's so much time you have right now. Can you consolidate some of your earning assets and put them in corporations today so you can actually charge certain expenses? I'm not talking about tax evasion, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just talking about creativity to make sure that you lower your leakages. So in B alone, you've taken care of what you probably miss out on A. And you don't have to grind your head just trying to earn more money, because you actually waste it in other avenues. C, wealth and asset protection. This is the worst. You earn so much in A, guess what happens? Your child, your son gets into trouble, and the creditor or the party on the other side runs after you. You don't have anything to do with it, but because of your son, you actually have to shell out a certain amount. Your assets are not protected from other claimants. Have you sat down to be able to do this? When people think wealth protection, it's about insurance. Yes, insurance is high value. As I've shared in many forums that I've been part of, you know, people know me to be an advocate for insurance, but it's over and above insurance. How do you protect your wealth so that once you give it to someone, giving it to someone gets forth the act without leakage, but with control? How do you protect your wealth from your in-laws? Huh? You actually sacrifice riding the plane economy only to find out years from now, your son-in-law will be riding business in your own asset base through your money. So how do you protect that? Charitable giving. We all want to give. We all want to contribute. But how can you structure this so that you can actually give more? By lowering the kind of deductions, by lowering the kind of taxation that goes into it. How can you give more? I always tell people, this is very important. Charitable giving is very, very important in terms of continuing the flow. Continuing the flow in a sense that continuous flows gets you more wealth. You can never outgive God. So you have to give more. But when you give more, you also have to plan that out so that you can actually take out certain things from government, make it tax deductible, structuring it so that you do it correctly. Some people try to do this directly and they waste a lot of money doing this. Why? Because you're not into charitable giving. That's not your business. Even my charity, it's almost like investments. I rely on a fund manager. For my charity, I rely on charities who have already structured, who already have beneficiaries, so that I don't waste my money administering the charity. That's also a leakage. That's also a wastage. So there are, you want to help the elderly, there's Anna Wim there. You want to help children, there's Hitler's Foundation. They are already at it. But on top of that, you also give people you know, right? So even charitable giving, you need to plan. Lastly, legacy planning. Generational impact. You know, I tell people, are you sure that the wealth you're actually going to pass on will actually survive more than one generation? Can it be 2 or 3 generations or 5? I tell a lot of people, you know, the rich people in Paris, in Florence, Italy, in many places of the world are still the richest people after centuries. Why? Because the legacy that have been passed on effectively through generations. No, Rex, my children are good. They're not gonna fight. They're not gonna sell this. Really. I've been through all that, ladies and gentlemen. I've seen that happen. You have a problem with a child who spends a lot. Why give him all the money? Why can't you structure it in a way that he gets X at age 25, he gets X at age 30, he gets married, he's gonna get some, he's gonna buy a house, he's gonna get some. But you're going to trickle that so that he can be responsibly managing the wealth that you handed over. And I'm not saying beg him to do it. I'm saying you give him with all the right elements so that he doesn't have a choice but to stay responsible. That can be done. And as I say that, many people here in this webinar probably won't even have a will at this time. I mean, you're over 2,000 people, right? How many of you have wills? If this is like an event, like I have you in front of me, I'll have a show of hands and I'll tell you that's going to be a bare minimum. Not a lot of people have prepared wills. And they will always have justifications. Sir, there's nothing to pass on. Or sir, I don't have the time. I'll probably wait till I have the time. Or sir, there's no need for that because my kids are not gonna fight. Hello. It's not about them fighting. It's also you being able to give what's right for each. Very important. Next slide. This one I'm not going to discuss completely because, as I've said, we have limited time. But peace of mind and financial security can be computed. There is a mathematical base to this. And that's the reason why, as I don't discuss this, sorry, shameless plug, if you want the discussion of this, visit our YouTube channel. Rampver Financials has a YouTube channel. Subscribe, like those videos, because we have a lot of videos that we can share with you. I mean, I don't have over 45 minutes for this today. So this by itself is already over 30 minutes. Financial stress level, how often do you think about your situation? The more you think, the more you're stressed. B, emergency fund cover. Can you cover your expenses? 3 months, 6 months? If you have a year of emergency fund cover, you won't be stressed. Net worth. Do you have more than your debts? Have you started asset building? And this would be very important. DEF. It's a function of income and how you spend and your debts. ENF, most important, because passive income as a ratio of your total income. If you have more passive income than your direct active income, that means you can stop working. That's ultimate peace of mind. You work because you want to, not because you have to. When your passive income coming from your investments would be higher than your direct income, and they can cover everything that you spend on. That's what you call financial freedom. These are not words that we call from nice vocabulary. They have a mathematical base to it. And that's very important. When you realize that when you want to achieve something, there is a track towards it, and there is a dashboard that you can go back to on a regular basis so that you can monitor progress. You cannot have peace of mind just by waking up one morning and saying you won't have worries. Your worries can get the better of you, especially in a pandemic like this. So track yourself through improving your financial security. Next slide. It's all a matter of perspective. It's always a mental game. And that mental game goes through this. Are you looking at this pandemic as painful, or is it an opportunity? Is it a painful experience, or will this be a great opportunity? The answer to that is in the questions you ask yourself. Why does this have to happen to me? Why now? when you ask yourself those questions, guess what? You will answer them. Your own brain will answer them, and your answer will actually direct you towards an emotional response that might not be empowering. But if you ask yourself the right question, what can I do at this time to grow? What can I do at this time to learn? Work on the building blocks so that, I can not only survive this pandemic, I can thrive in this pandemic. I mentioned this many, many times. Not all people who fall on water drown. You drown by staying submerged in water. There are people who survive, but there are people who do even better. They drop into water, they swim, they frolic. And that's what people who are ready do. This is not the end. This is just part of the journey. This too will pass. If it does, where does that put you? How will you be in a frame of mind? How can you be empowered? How can you eliminate that anxiety or depression? Many people will always say this crisis is unprecedented. I've heard that before. In 2008, it was also unprecedented. In 1997, that was also unprecedented. There are always things that are unique about every crisis. But let me tell you this, there's only one thin line that cuts through all of those crises. One thin line that equates all of them. And guess what that is? All of those crises are followed by recoveries. When that happens, I don't know when, but surely it will. COVID will be a thing of the past 5 to 10 years from now. When a recovery happens, the question becomes, where does that put you? We're at Rampver Financials. We want to handhold people. We want to help them navigate not just a pandemic, but life in general, the fulfillment of dreams in general. And we're partners with ATRAM. We're partners in ATRAM, and we're trying to do new things. Like, we are not in YouTube before. We activated that YouTube channel because we are in that pandemic. But at the tail end of the day, it's still the same objective. So please, it's your responsibility. It's not the government's. It's nobody else's. So let ATRAM and Rampver work for you. That might be one of the best decisions you'll make. Thank you so much, Paulo. I think we can answer questions if there are questions to be raised.
Yeah,
this
sure.
Is my message. Manage what you can manage, and that's yourself.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Paulo.
No, it's okay. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you because that was quite inspiring and very insightful. I'm sure a lot of our viewers are actually, I have a viewer from Facebook right now, and I'm just going to read this verbatim. Was supposed to go to the gym, but now I'm hooked on this. This is really good pala. So actually, my friend, you are exercising your financial knowledge and your financial wisdom via
Hitting two birds with one stone, Paulo. That's great.
So I just want to get on this. You put out an interesting point on automation in this era of digitalization, making things more efficient. Can you share sample systems that may help investors? Or what do you use personally?
Okay. Paulo, when I was a lot younger, that was a long time ago, right? I monitored my positions, income, expenses, and I even have a personal balance sheet to get that net worth. Over time, that has become a very robust, set of tools. Now, my own children use them. And as I've mentioned earlier, they put on their own flavor. They put on the millennial touch, so to speak. We can share those templates. We can share those information. Maybe if ATRAM can get your email addresses. If you can visit our YouTube channel, comments on the videos, give us your email addresses. We can email you those statements because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We've done that in so many decades. We can share those with you. But then again, I will just have to caution you. These programs, these systems, these templates will only be as good as the information you put in them. So it's very important that you take on these things seriously. put on the required information, and monitor yourself on a regular basis. As I've said, visit our YouTube channel, subscribe, link up with us through our website, give us your email addresses, we will give you those instruments. But very important, you have to do the job.
All right, thank you. One of the common sentiments shared by most is, can you plan your estate even if you don't have much of it?
This is a great question because it can actually become a chicken and egg thing, right? It's almost like, why will I have to do it? I have nothing. But I'll tell you this, you will not get there if you don't start doing it. See, estate planning is required in the entire process. You don't do estate planning when you already have an estate. You start with it because estate planning and financial planning go together. In fact, this is something that's very elementary for our friends in IMG. They have what we call the X curve. The X curve, at the young part of your life, you will have to have more protection and you're building your wealth, so you're starting at the bottom. So your estate is just increasing, but you have an instant estate through your insurance. As you move through your life, you build up a bigger base materially because your income is growing and you have that like let's say that set of investments going up. In fact, your insurance will have to go lower. As you grow older, insurance takes a minor role in your financial portfolio because you can now build up your base through other assets. That's why we call it an X curve. Protection over investments at the start, but later on, more investments and lesser of protection afterwards.
Thank you very much. And you brought up interesting topics earlier about spending time with your family. So I'm going to ask you a two-part question. The first part is more of a serious one. The second part is more of a nudge. Any tips on how to work with your family to do a financial review with you? And the second question is, would we be seeing you on TikTok soon, Sir Rex?
The second one is something that I deal with on a daily basis because they're pushing me to do it. And I was telling them, if I get to do that, I lose a lot of respect, But they're saying, no, that's the world today. But anyway, on the first question though, you start with children very early. Again, I'm sorry, but we have a whole video on what to teach kids, on how to teach kids. And the first and foremost would be values. They won't exactly follow what you tell them to do. They will see what you're doing. And when they see what you're doing and they see that to be working, they'll do the same. So you'll put it down on the table. As I've said, it's more of me trying to teach them at the start. But you see, they're now teaching me many things. Like I sometimes do my mark-to-market valuations on a manual basis. They've done theirs on an automatic basis. So they're teaching me how to do the dashboard, which means they're saying that, Daddy, you're doing it on a monthly basis and you require more effort. We can do it on a weekly basis with less effort. So I'm like kind of managing and balancing the convenience of technology with the input that, the information provides, like how analysis is done and what are the remedial actions that we need to do. So it's a give and take thing, but it's very important that we move together with our kids. As I've said, they are real legacies. Quite frankly, children are our true legacy. So it's our job to even, create it as an objective that they have to be much, much better than us. Much, much better than us.
Thank you very much for that, Rex. Maybe this could be one of our last questions. Can you give us a snapshot of your personal portfolio in terms of asset allocation? Like, we like asking these questions to our guests sometimes, and just to get an idea or a feel of a grasp of what a portfolio of a Rex Mendoza is.
Thank you, Paulo. It's tough because of the pandemic. That portfolio has moved. And Mike knows this. I've been telling him that, very early on, we've moved a lot to cash. Most recently, we have a lot of emergency funds, but fixed income short term has taken a big chunk. Before, that was easily less than 10%, maybe hovering at around 5%. Today, it's huge. It's almost like 20% because we're positioning for a major deployment. And I guess you all know maybe by the tail end of July or August might be good opportunities to do this. But I have businesses of which like about 30% would be there, stocks, bonds. But most recently, and people in Rampver know this, most recently my direct stock position have actually gone down. More and more of them have moved to managed funds. Because, I have to admit, my direct stock portfolio did not do better than ATRAM's all throughout 3 or 4 years. So why bother, right? So as I've said, I have a trading portfolio and I have a core portfolio, but I've lowered them. I've been inclined to add on to my managed funds. That has risen to like about another 20%, because I put that all together. No, managed assets and direct stock investments are in a basket of marketable securities, and the proportion would be either one directly controlled by me or two controlled by others. And then lastly, all the luxury real estate. I have a substantial base of investments also in art. But these are not exactly as huge as all of the things that I've mentioned thus far.
Okay, and related to that, what's a good mix of debt versus investments or assets?
Okay, I would probably, like on a personal note, I wouldn't use debt as an integral part. See, sorry, I will have to phrase this better. If you use, there are two debts, good debt and bad debt. Bad debt is when you borrow to enjoy something you can't afford. Okay, I want to avoid that completely. Good debt is when you borrow to earn more out of it. So when I say debt, I borrow because I increase my asset base and I can deploy more capital, because debt is cheap. Debt is cheaper than equity. So I borrow, and quite frankly, I can increase that at a time like this. Whenever there's a pandemic, my debt base to funnel investments is higher. It can easily go 20 to 25%. But I have to mention this. That debt is matched up with assets because I borrowed to invest. It's very different when you borrow because you traveled, because you enjoyed certain things. That doesn't have an asset matched onto it. So that's the reason why I really wanted to differentiate those, because those are two different types of debt. So on this side, and this is even what I advise a lot of people, get your debt commitments before any opportunities on the table. See, a lot of people, it's already a pandemic now. There are a lot of cheap assets they want to buy. It's only now that they're going to apply with banks. Banks are going to be stricter now. Banks are going to scrutinize you now. So it would have been better if before the pandemic you have pre-approved loans, you have pre-approved balances, no commitments, but ready to deploy, right? You can just issue a check. I'm in that kind of a position, and that's the reason why I can deploy. But for the others who have not done it, I hope that you can do it moving forward. The opportunity happens, and when you're going to take on the debt, when you're about to execute, that might be too late. That might be too late.
Thank you very much. And at this point, I'd like to introduce ATRAM CEO, Mr. Mike Ferrer. I believe he has some words to share.
Hi, Rex.
Hi, Mike. Hi.
Sorry, my video doesn't seem to be working, but as long as you can hear me, that's fine. Well, first, obviously, I want to thank you for coming on this webinar. We've had record attendance and I think a record number of questions, which unfortunately we'll not be able to cover, but we'll send to you after this as well. I have a lot of questions, and fortunately, since I have access to you, I'll be able to ask them over coffee in the future. But I just wanted to say that I've known Rex for the last 25 years or so. Shows you we're not that young. But we've been industry colleagues, more recently business partners, and I consider Rex very much one of my own financial heroes, and mentors. And every time I listen to Rex, and I've listened to him talk probably now more than 50 times, I always learn something new, especially today. But the message is always clear throughout all these talks. And that is, it's not just about managing your investments, but managing your life as a whole, especially in this time of crisis, but also opportunity. So, I mean, to everyone out there, I highly recommend reading Rex's books, listening to him on YouTube through the Rampver channel. And obviously, we hope to have you here again, I think, for a part 2 or even 3 in the future. So just on that note, and in closing, I want to thank you, Rex. Maraming salamat. And thank you all for attending today's webinar.
Thank you, Mike. My pleasure, my absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Mike. I think we can leave it here for this webinar. Thank you again, Rex, Mendoza, Mike, and to our audience as well for your questions. If you have any further questions or would like to learn more about ATRAM's funds, strategies, please get in touch with your relevant ATRAM relationship manager or visit our website, www.atram.com.ph. Lastly, please answer the survey at the end of this session, as your feedback is valuable to us. We appreciate you taking the time, and on behalf of ATRAM, I'd like to wish for the safety of you and your family. Best of luck. Thank you very much and have a great day.